Welcome to Idaho Fish and Game's Hook and Bulletin podcast, your weekly news roundup of hunting, fishing, trapping, and conservation stories from around the Gem State. Hosted by Fish and Game's Public Information Specialist, Connor J. Lease.
And welcome back to Idaho Fish and Game's Hook and Bulletin podcast. This week we're talking about a brand new wildlife overpass recently completed in North Idaho, 31 wasted kokanee dumped illegally in Hayden Lake, and a new Access Yes property coming to Unit 69 in southeast Idaho. But first, you may know how to spot them, identify them, track them, shoot them, and cook them, but do you know these interesting facts about Idaho's deer and elk? Let's dive in. Mule deer were uncommon in Idaho prior to white settlement. Early journals and observations from settlers and other historical documents rarely mention mule deer, but they frequently mention bison and bighorn sheep. Bighorns were also commonly depicted in Native American rock art throughout Idaho, but seldom mule deer. Regulated deer hunting in Idaho predates our statehood. The first hunting season for deer in what is now Idaho, then part of the Idaho Territory that included Idaho, Montana, and part of Wyoming, was implemented in 1863, which closed deer hunting between February 1st and June 30th. The state of Idaho's first regulated deer season was in 1893, and a hunting license was first required in 1903. Most mule deer in Idaho seasonally migrate twice yearly between summer and winter range, and then back again. The longest documented mule deer migration is over 240 miles from winter range in the Red Desert of Wyoming to summer range near Island Park. Researchers believe mule deer learn migration routes from their mothers and continue that same route for the rest of their lives. Despite being associated with Idaho's deserts and mountainous country, mule deer are good swimmers and don't hesitate to swim across large rivers, large lakes, and reservoirs. Mule deer have up to 11 subspecies, which includes their close cousins, the black-tailed deer. Today, mule deer and subspecies inhabit every state west of the Mississippi River except Hawaii and as far south as Baja, Mexico. Now, let's talk about elk. Unlike deer, which drop their antlers during winter, elk antlers typically remain until the growth of the new antlers starts pushing off the old ones. Full-grown elk antlers can weigh up to 40 pounds per set and can take up to 160 days to fully grow. A bull's antlers increase in size annually until at least its sixth set, then may increase or decrease in size according to several factors, including health and nutrition. Idaho hunters have harvested more than 20,000 elk annually in 9 of the last 10 years, which is a feat duplicated only one other time in Idaho's history, from the mid-1980s to the mid-1990s. Elk have 2 canine teeth, commonly referred to as ivories. Biologists believe ivories are the remnants of saber-like tusks that ancestral elk used in combat. Think about that. Elk are the most vocal of Idaho's big game herbivores. They communicate through a variety of vocalizations. The most commonly heard are bulls bugling in the fall, but cows frequently converse among the herd with little mews and chirps and barks. A cow elk can recognize her calf by the unique tone of its squeal. In 1909, elk populations in Idaho were so alarmingly low that a moratorium on elk hunting was declared in parts of the state. Elk herds from Yellowstone National Park were translocated to restore Idaho's population, which started in 1915 by rail car, then continued to various parts of the state until 1940. Last but not least, we got whitetails. Whitetails are not only the OG deer species of North America, they are also the oldest living deer species on Earth. Their direct ancestors reached North America by crossing the Bering Land Bridge into Alaska, and fossils very difficult to distinguish from modern whitetails have been found in Florida that date back 5 million years. The size, shape, and location of a whitetail's eyes give it vision 310 degrees around themselves, and their night vision is as good as their day vision. So if you think whitetails have eyes in the back of their heads and keep vampire hours, you may be right. Idaho's whitetails are widely perceived as homebodies who live in a fairly small area year-round. However, data from Fish and Game's GPS collar research has shown some does traveled 20 to 25 miles to have their fawns, then returned months later with their fawns in tow. Whitetail fawns are small at birth, typically weighing 6 to 8 pounds, and some subspecies, like Florida's Keys deer, may weigh about 2 pounds at birth. But whitetail fawns can double their weight in their first week and commonly weigh 10 times their birth weight by their first winter. But Idaho's historic deer harvest has long been dominated by mule deer. In 1975, Fish and Game started tracking the harvest by species, and in 1994, whitetails topped mule deer for the first time ever. Since then, whitetail harvest has exceeded mule deer 5 more times, most recently in 2023. Mule deer continue to be the larger portion of the harvest in most years, but the percentage of whitetails has crept up due to healthy populations and increased interest in hunting them. For more on this story, hit the link below to check out Roger Phillips's article on our website. Next up, if you like to hunt in Idaho's Panhandle, you're going to want to pay attention to this next story, as land sales in Unit 5 remove nearly 30,000 acres from the Large Tracts Program. Since December of 2024, close to 30,000 acres of private land enrolled in the Large Tracts Program have been sold by Stimson Lumber to the Coeur d'Alene tribe. The land is located on the Coeur d'Alene Reservation and has always been an important part of the tribe's homeland. The sale of the lands has resulted in their removal from the Large Tracts Program, making them no longer accessible by the general public under the program. Entering any private land while access is closed or restricted is considered trespassing. For more information about hunting on lands owned by the Coeur d'Alene tribe, hunters are encouraged to contact the tribe directly. All of the 30,000 acres sold are located in the Panhandle region's Unit 5, south of Coeur d'Alene. We got a map on our website that you can check out, or you can also visit the Idaho Hunt Planner, also on our website, to view all the changes to parcel accessibility in the Large Tracts Program. These sales are a reminder that all Large Tracts parcels are private lands and can change ownership at any time. Hunters, anglers, and recreationists should never assume that last season's access is still valid this season. So always confirm land status before your trip by checking the Idaho Hunt Planner. If you're curious to learn more, check out our recent article, Know Before You Go story, on our website. There's a lot to this story, folks, and TJ Ross, our regional communications manager in the Panhandle region, has put together a full list of helpful resources, links, and maps to help make sense of this whole thing. So hit the link below to learn more. Speaking of the Idaho Panhandle, here's a more uplifting story about a recent wildlife overpass that just got completed in Osburn. After a decade in the making, a new wildlife overpass and fencing project on Interstate 90 in North Idaho is finally complete. Finished in 2025, the project in the community of Osburn now offers safe passage for both wildlife and drivers. The effort was made possible through strong community support in Osburn, along with grants from the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation. Additional support came from the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation, Yellowstone to Yukon Conservation Initiative, Idaho Fish and Game, and assistance from F&H Mine Supply. For more than 60 years, a paved bridge across I-90 sat unused after mining development on the north side of the interstate blocked access to a frontage road. The surrounding area, however, was heavily used by wildlife. Instead of using the abandoned bridge, animals crossed the busy highway. This particular section of I-90 recorded the second highest density of wildlife collisions in the stretch of interstate from the east side of Coeur d'Alene to the Montana border. In the past decade alone, nearly 75 animals were struck within 2 miles of this project site. For years, local truck driver and outdoorsman Carl Wilson led the charge to convert an unused bridge into a wildlife overpass. Carl was concerned about the elk herd that crossed I-90 near the overpass and regularly got hit on the freeway. He rallied his neighbors, local businesses, and state partners to bring the vision forward. Unfortunately, Carl passed away in December of 2022. Today, Carl's legacy is being carried on by Kristen Voorhees, a fourth-generation Silver Valley resident and civil engineer. Quote, Carl's vision is the story. He cared deeply and he convinced others in the community to care as well. He found and brought together the people who could make it happen, and that led to action. Our community wants him to receive credit for this project and to be remembered for it, said Voorhees. Beginning in 2021, Fish and Game worked alongside Osburn residents to secure grants to retrofit the bridge and install wildlife funnel fencing. The design also incorporated nearby I-90 bridges spanning the South Fork of the Coeur d'Alene River, creating an underpass allowing for additional wildlife movement. By August of 2025, the project was finally complete, a retrofitted crossing connecting critical habitat in the Idaho Panhandle National Forest within the Silver Valley. To quote Laura Wolf, one of our regional wildlife biologists, quote, the funnel fencing is working well to keep animals safe as they move through their habitat. Cameras on the structures already showed deer regularly using the underpass. Eric Greenwell, Senior Land Connectivity Manager with the Yellowstone to Yukon Conservation Initiative, added, quote, this project is a great win for people and wildlife. It's about a community coming together in their own backyard to keep people and wildlife safe along this interstate corridor. The people of Osburn led the charge. They found the right partners to get this job done, and we're happy they asked us to be one of those partners to support their creative vision, end quote. Fish and Game will continue to monitor wildlife use of the crossing and track collision trends in the years ahead. The project also demonstrates the financial benefits of repurposing existing infrastructure. The Osburn Wildlife Overpass cost approximately $600,000 secured through grants, compared to the $5 to $6 million typically required for new overpass construction. To see photos of the new overpass and to watch Regional Communication Manager TJ Ross's full video about the building and partnerships that went into this project, hit the link in the description.
The CWD Report.
If you've hunted big game in Idaho, odds are good you've heard about chronic wasting disease. And hopefully you know the basics of this incurable, fatal disease that infects deer, elk, and moose. But you may be wondering, what is Fish and Game doing about it? The answer is fairly simple. Idaho Fish and Game is working to protect the future of deer and elk hunting, and CWD is a threat to that. Biologists will continue testing, responding, and adapting to CWD. Our CWD management priority is keeping the percentage of animals infected or the prevalence low in deer and elk herds to reduce and or slow the spread of the disease. CWD can't be eradicated because it remains in the environment for decades. But we can't do it alone. It's going to take a long-term commitment and partnership with you, our hunters. With a little luck and a lot of diligence, together we can minimize CWD's effects on Idaho's deer and elk and our hunting opportunities. We all want the same thing in the end, healthy and abundant herds. The most effective way to get there is for us and hunters to be partners in the fight against CWD. Even if there are disagreements on specific management actions, hopefully there can be agreement on that goal. There is currently no reliable way to test live wild animals for CWD, so our staff relies on hunters to monitor for the disease by having their harvested animals tested. In some units, testing is mandatory and free for all harvested deer because deer are most susceptible to CWD and where it is most likely to be detected. Fish and Game also offers free testing for hunters who voluntarily have animals tested in units where it is not mandatory. Hunters can check the results online, and the Center for Disease Control recommends that people don't consume CWD-positive game. Hunters are also crucial in helping us manage the disease in infected herds. Depending on the situation, reducing the total number of deer or changing the age structure of the herd may be the most effective method of combating the disease. But eradicating herds is never the goal. If additional animals need to be harvested to manage the disease, public hunting is the preferred tool that our staff uses. CWD spreads slower when a small portion of the herd, say less than 5%, is infected. Conversely, research has shown when prevalence is higher, the disease spreads much faster into more animals. When a large portion of animals gets infected, it eventually leads to a smaller deer herd. A total of 100 deer and elk, mostly deer, have tested positive for CWD in Idaho since it was first detected in 2021. That's a relatively small number considering hunters in 2024 alone killed about 21,000 elk and 45,000 deer. CWD was first detected in Unit 14 in the Slate Creek area north of Riggins. Since then, it's been detected in Unit 18 just west of Unit 14, in Unit 23 south of Unit 14, Unit 1 in extreme North Idaho, and most recently in private domestic elk operations in Unit 63A, north of Idaho Falls. Each area where the disease was detected has been handled differently depending on the species, the number of detections, the migration patterns of deer and elk in the area, and other factors. Fish and Game has managed each scenario adaptively, instituting what they believe will be the most effective strategies to minimize prevalence and spread while simultaneously trying to minimize the burden on hunters. Let's take a look at Units 14 and 18 specifically. When CWD was first detected in Slate Creek of Unit 14 in fall of 21, the Fish and Game Commission held emergency surveillance hunts in Units 13, 14, 18, and 23 to get a better idea of how prevalent the disease was and its distribution. Fish and Game found that there was a hot spot in and around the Slate Creek area of Unit 14, with only a few other positive cases in other portions of Unit 14, and no positive cases in the other units. A CWD management zone was instituted in Units 14 and 15, which restricted the transportation of specific parts of deer, elk, and moose carcasses outside of those units. Unit 15 was initially included in the CWD management zone, even though no disease had been detected there, based on our understanding of the seasonal movements of elk between the two units. Fish and Game subsequently increased deer hunting opportunities in Unit 14 to reduce densities, particularly of white-tailed deer, which have tested positive at a higher rate than mule deer or elk. The Slate Creek area has a large portion of private land, and while the Fish and Game Commission can expand hunting seasons and offer more tags, it's largely landowners who determine how much hunting is allowed to take place in the area. The department has also worked closely with landowners in the Slate Creek area for its CWD management. Because of the identified hotspot of disease, Fish and Game also used a series of control actions in late winter of 2023 and 24 to reduce deer density in that area and minimize the spread. During these actions, Fish and Game and USDA Wildlife Services, a federal agency that specializes in removing wildlife, used methods not typically used for hunting, including baiting and shooting at night, to reduce the deer herd in and around Slate Creek. When there was no disease detected in Unit 15 after extensive testing, it was removed from the CWD management zone, and mandatory sampling requirements in that unit were lifted to minimize the burden on hunters. When CWD was detected across the river from Slate Creek in Unit 18, that unit was added to the CWD management zone, and mandatory testing of harvested deer was implemented. Our staff will continue to monitor this area and continue working with hunters and landowners to manage prevalence and spread of the disease. Moving on to Unit 23, a single mule deer buck tested positive for CWD in that unit in late fall of 2023. This case was managed significantly differently than the situation in Unit 14. Most mule deer migrate out of Unit 23 in early November and disperse into lower elevation winter ranges in the surrounding units. Rather than immediately have a surveillance hunt like we did in Unit 14, Fish and Game worked to get CWD samples from animals harvested in all remaining hunts that year, Then the Fish and Game Commission required CWD testing of deer harvested from Units 23, 24, and 32A for the 2024 hunting season to evaluate disease prevalence and distribution in this area. To date, no additional animals have tested positive. Mandatory testing requirements have continued in these units, so Fish and Game gets enough samples to ensure there isn't disease present. Aside from mandatory testing, there have been no changes to hunting seasons due to this single case of CWD. Up in the Idaho Panhandle in Unit 1, the first CWD detection in this unit was in July of 2024 when a white-tailed deer found dead tested positive. Fish and Game held an emergency CWD surveillance hunt in August of that year to better understand prevalence and distribution of the disease in this portion of Unit 1, and thus 2 more white-tailed deer tested positive within a mile of the first detection. The Fish and Game Commission established a CWD management zone and mandatory CWD testing requirements in the portion of Unit 1 east of the Selkirk Mountain Crest. In total, 6 total white-tailed deer have tested positive in Unit 1 to date. Unit 1 already had relatively long either-sex general season whitetail hunting opportunity, and Fish and Game also added CWD-focused controlled hunts for 2025 and 26 to help monitor and manage the disease. CWD prevalence is currently low, and our biologists will continue to monitor prevalence and spread relative to the existing hunt structure, with the goal of effectively managing the disease while minimizing burden to hunters as much as possible. You might be wondering to yourselves what's happening in other states with CWD. Idaho is not unique because within the last 5 years, a growing number of states have discovered CWD in their herds. To date, it has spread to 36 states, and only 3 western states have not detected it, including Oregon, Nevada, and Arizona. Some states have had CWD for decades longer than Idaho. Prevalence rates are high enough in many areas that hunters no longer want to hunt deer because of the high likelihood they will harvest an infected animal, or because deer herds have plummeted because CWD mortality exceeds birth rates. Fish and Game is trying to prevent those things from happening in Idaho by managing CWD at low prevalence levels with the long-term herd health and hunter opportunity in mind. Hunters concerned about the threat of CWD to Idaho's mule deer herds may rest a little easier knowing that current deer management may provide good hunting opportunity while also reducing the likelihood of CWD getting established at a high level in Idaho's herds. CWD research in other states has shown that fairly high harvest rates of mule deer bucks can keep CWD prevalence low. Mule deer bucks move around more than does and range over a broader area. If there is CWD in a herd, those wandering bucks are the most likely sources of transmission to nearby herds. Idaho's general season hunts typically lead to a fairly high harvest of bucks. It's common that 25 to 40% of bucks are taken annually in many units. While that may seem high, those rates are sustainable while still maintaining adequate buck-to-doe ratios, typically around 15 to 25 bucks per 100 does. Now, Fish and Game has a whole webpage devoted to all current CWD information, as well as lists of places to get your animal tested, how to remove lymph nodes for testing, and all kinds of other information. Hit the link in the description to learn more. All right, boys and girls, for our last story this week, we're heading down to southeast Idaho to talk about a new Access Yes property getting added to Unit 69. Nearly 27,000 acres of privately owned lands in southeast Idaho are now part of Idaho Fish and Game's Access Yes program, thanks to the East Idaho Grazing Association, or EIGA, and with that comes new access rules for sportsmen and sportswomen. For decades, hunters have enjoyed access to EIGA's owned private lands scattered across a section of Unit 69 northwest of Blackfoot Reservoir, spanning Fish and Game's southeast and upper Snake regions. However, as the use of motorized vehicles by hunters on EIGA's property has increased over the years, so has damage to the rangeland, fences, service roads, and streams. To allow continued hunter access while minimizing impacts to its private property segments, EIGA's acres in Unit 69 have been enrolled in the Access Yes program. Under this agreement, there is no need for hunters to request permission before accessing the EIGA-owned lands. However, only county roads on EIGA lands are open to motorized use. All other roads are closed to motorized travel. Hunters can find maps and details for this newly added Access Yes property online at East Idaho Grazing Association Access Yes property on our website. The Access Yes program works by partnering with private landowners to open their lands or provide access through them to hunters, anglers, and other outdoor recreationists. These agreements allow sportsmen and sportswomen to enjoy quality opportunities they might not otherwise have, while also supporting landowners who make access possible. Information for all current Access Yes properties can be found online at idfg.idaho.gov/yes or through the Go Outdoors Idaho mobile app. Printed brochures can also be found at regional offices and license vendors. That's it for major stories this week. Let's hit the rapid fire bulletin. Idaho Fish and Game closed harvest of unclipped adult fall Chinook salmon statewide on September 19th, and that closure has been extended through October 3rd. Fisheries for adipose clipped fall Chinook will remain open, but all unclipped adult fall Chinook salmon must be released. Fisheries managers will review harvest through the rest of this week and continue to track fish passage through the Columbia and Snake Rivers. If there are enough wild fish impacts left after next week, we may be able to reopen harvest of unclipped adult fall Chinook. Idaho Fish and Game is seeking information regarding 31 kokanee that were illegally dumped in Hayden Lake. The discovery was made by a Kootenai County Sheriff's deputy on September 15th near the intersection of Warren Street and North Reed Road in Hayden. After making the discovery, the deputy immediately contacted Idaho Fish and Game. Based on visible body marks, it is believed the fish were illegally harvested with gill nets. All edible portions of the meat were left intact, meaning the kokanee were wasted. Anyone with information about this incident is encouraged to call the Citizens Against Poaching hotline at 1-800-632-5999. Information can also be reported online. Idaho Fish and Game is seeking a volunteer representative from the salmon region who wants to have an impact on shooting range decisions. The volunteer will serve on a Citizens Shooting Range Advisory Committee, which will be responsible for providing annual input about public shooting range grant applications. Eligible candidates should regularly use public shooting ranges and understand the elements necessary for safe range operation. The committee represents a diverse mix of shooters, including hunters, recreational and competitive shooters, and industry representatives. For more information, contact Crystal Smith, Fish and Game Hunter Education Technician at 208-993-3805. All right, that's all the news we have for this week. Thanks for putting an ear to Idaho Fish and Game's Hook and Bulletin. If there's something on your mind, or if you got a question related to fish and game matters, feel free to drop us a line at podcast@idfg.idaho.gov. Again, that's podcast@idfg.idaho.gov. Thanks for listening, folks. We'll catch you next week.